Good evening and welcome to our 20th annual Strong Tower Conference. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Carm and I am your host tonight. Tonight's speaker became a Christian while attending a university and has been involved in various Christian ministries. Since 1999, he has worked with the Australian Fellowship of Evangelical Students as a campus evangelist and Islamic engagement director. Engaging with Islam is one of tonight's speaker's main interests, and he does this through research, writing, training, evangelism, lectures, and debates. He is one of the founding authors of one of my favorite go-to websites, Answering Islam, and he is also the author of Engaging with Islam. Our guest speaker has spent more than 2 decades speaking with Muslims. When asked what motivates his passion, he states he wants to equip the church to understand and address the Islamic assumptions and to know where to start as you seek to present your Muslim friends with Christ and share with them about his wonderful gift of salvation. Amen. Tonight's workshop is titled, Are the Authentic Hadiths Reliable? And it will be followed by some Q&A. So if you're in the chat, please gather your questions so we can ask. It is my pleasure to welcome Reverend Samuel Green. Go ahead.
Hello, and now I've got an echo voice. No, that's gone. Great. Thank you for having me. Thank you for that kind introduction. And it's great to be with everyone today. I'm really glad and happy that George has been able to put on this conference and that this is the 20th year. What a great thing for us to be able to get this type of training over 2 decades now. Now, what I'd like to do now is to take you through some material that I have on the Hadiths, and just to fill out the picture and to look at how we should be thinking about them as a Christian and whether or not they're reliable. And I particularly want to end by looking at how we can use this evangelistically, how we can use it evangelistically. Now, I need to share my screen. Was it Carmen? Carmen, are you the host? I need to share a screen.
Okay, go ahead.
So I've got that screen there. So is that up on here? Here we go. Fantastic. Yes, thank you. I'm just going to take people through this now. Maybe that other screenshot where we can have the notes for more of the screen. Oh, okay, we can do that one. Okay, I was thinking I could be down the side, but that's a great view. No, not that one. Yeah, we'll stick with that one. We'll stick with that one. So that's it. Yeah, that's a good one. So I want to define the word hadith. Now, what's interesting is that the word hadith just means a story or a narration, a story or a narration. And one thing that the Quran translators never tell us about, and that Muslims don't say, is that the Quran actually describes itself as a hadith, So you can see on the first reference there, Quran 39 verse 23, Allah has sent down the best hadith. And some of you may be familiar with the challenge that Muslims put to us where they say, produce a surah like it, produce a surah like it. That's not always what the Quran says. Sometimes the Quran says, as I show in verse 52, verse 34, let them produce a hadith like it. Now, why do I say this? Well, it's because in the way that Islam is practiced, there is a big division between the Quran on the one hand and the hadith on the other hand. And you may be familiar with collections of the hadith. There are famous collections by men like Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim, and these are large collections. They are large. They normally go into about 6-volume sets, and when you get all of them together, you are talking about a lot of books. You're talking about a library of books, a large library of books for these hadiths. And so normally, Muslims want to have a strong division between the Quran and the Hadith. They want to see that the Quran is this very unique book and the Hadith are these other separate books. And I just wanted to start off today by saying, if you were reading the Quran in Arabic, you read the word hadith being used to describe the Quran a bit more often than you may think. And so, yeah, I just want you to know that there's a little bit of overlap here that we may not be aware of. Now, the two main collections of hadith that I'll just refer to are the collections by Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim. Now, there are many more than these, but these men gathered together these stories about Muhammad, these rulings from Muhammad. These were not considered to be Quran, but still things that Muhammad did or said which are binding upon the Muslim community. And as I said, when you get these collections, they are far bigger than the Quran. Right? The Quran's relatively small compared to what you get in the Hadith. Now, the Hadith is essential for Islam. Okay, it's absolutely essential. So, for instance, how many times a day you should pray? That's not in the Quran. That comes from the Hadith. What you do when you go on pilgrimage, very little of that is in the Quran. Most of it's in the Hadith. Practices like customs and stuff like circumcision, not in the Quran, comes from the Hadith. And so these books are actually essential to Islam. They're essential to Islam. Most of them were put together in the 4th century, of the 4th Islamic century. And so they're actually correlated and brought together and standardized in the 4th century. So they're actually quite late. I guess a comparison would be if our Bible was made in the 4th century, right? If people were writing up the Bible and putting it together, and Matthew was published in the 4th century, not in the 1st century. So it's a long time after. Now, the interesting thing is, though, that Muslims do not agree about the Hadith. They don't agree about them. And so you can meet Muslims who have very different views about the Hadith. Most Muslims will probably not be familiar with the intricacies of this, but there are the Sunni collections of Hadith, and there are the Shia collections of Hadith, and there is a little bit of overlap between them. And so, for instance, I was talking to a Shia Muslim friend, and he said to me that he does not accept any of the Hadiths, any of the stories of Muhammad that come from Abu Huraira. Now, Abu Huraira is one of the main collectors of Hadiths for the Sunni Muslims, but Shia Muslims don't accept him. They don't see him as reliable. And so this is one of the things you'll find, that Muslims don't actually agree on the Hadith. And so you'll see that one Muslim will quote a Hadith or another one may not quote it. And so the reason I'm bringing this up is Muslims have different canons. Muslims have different canons. So for us as Christians, our canon is the Bible. Okay, our canon is the Bible. And sometimes Muslims will say to us, well, there's the Catholic canon and there's the Protestant and Jewish canon. And yes, we have our own questions there. But the way you respond to that is to point out that the Quran is not the canon of Islam. Okay, the Quran is not the canon of Islam. It's the Quran plus all these hadiths. That's what the canon is. And Muslims don't actually agree on these hadiths. And so they actually don't have a fixed canon. There is no one Islamic canon. There's a movement amongst Muslims who reject the hadiths altogether. And they only have the Quran as their canon. I won't go into the different canons of the Quran now. There's 10 different canons of the Quran, but we'll look at that. You can see that another time. So look, I just wanted to give that as a basic introduction, because not everybody may know what the hadiths are. And And so that's how the Hadiths function within Islam. They are these stories about Muhammad. They give additional information to the Quran that the Quran doesn't have. Muslims differ about them. They are essential to Islam. Muslims therefore have different canons. And then, as I said, sometimes the Quran even calls itself a hadith. And so there's a little bit of overlap there. Now, that's my introduction. Did we want to have any questions at this point? Is that possible, Carmen, for people to ask questions now, or should I do that all at the end? Okay, I will keep going. Well, what I want to do now is I want to show you how I want to show you two hadiths, one which is the most earliest version of the hadith, and then one which comes from the 4th century. So one comes from the 1st Islamic century. The second one comes from, excuse me, the second one comes from the 4th Islamic century. So we're going to read these, and we're just going to simply compare them. Now, sorry, I've just jumped ahead of myself there, so we'll come back to that one. So let's have a read of this one. This is a hadith from one of the biographies of Muhammad's life. Now, the apostle was anxious for the welfare of his people, that is the Quraysh, wishing to attract them as far as he could. It has been mentioned that he longed for a way to attract them, and the method he adopted is what Ibn Hamid told me that Salama said. Ibn Ishaq told him from Yazid bin Ziyad of Medina. I will go through all these names. When the apostle saw that his people turned their back on him, and he was pained by their estrangement from what he brought them from God, he longed that there should come to him from God a message that would reconcile his people to him. Okay, so Muhammad is sad that the Meccans are not believing him, and he wants something to come from God that will reconcile him to his people. Okay, now because of his love for his people and his anxiety over it, it would delight him if the obstacle that made his task so difficult should be removed, so that he could meditate, so that he meditated on the project and longed for it, and it was dear to him. Then God sent down by the star when it sets, your command errs not and is not deceived. He speaks not from his own desire. Now, so what's happened is Muhammad is thinking about it. He's meditating on it. He's mulling over how can he bring about reconciliation between himself and the Meccans. And then one day he's reciting this part of the Quran, Surah 53. And it gets to the part where it says these words. And he reached the words, have you thought of Al-Lat and Al-Uzza and Manat the third? So Muhammad is in the mosque. He's reciting part of the Quran. You know, the Meccans are around him. And he recites this. Have you heard of Al-Lat, Uzza, Manat, and the third? Now, these were the gods of Mecca. These were the gods of Mecca. Now, what does Muhammad say when he recites the names of these gods? We then read, Satan, when he, that is Muhammad, was meditating on it and desiring to bring reconciliation to his people, Satan put on Muhammad's tongue, these are the exalted Garanik, whose intercession is approved. So that is, Muhammad recited part of the Quran, and then he recited a new part of it, which said that the gods of Mecca were approved and that you could use them for intercession. Now, what happened? And this is the longest reading, but this is where we'll start. When the Quraysh heard that is when Muhammad's tribe, when the Meccans heard this, they were delighted and greatly pleased at the way he spoke of their gods and they listened to him while the believers were holding that what their prophet brought from their Lord was true. So the Meccans, they're really happy at what Muhammad has said. The believers, what are they doing? They're believing that what Muhammad said was true, not suspecting a mistake or a vain desire or slip. And when he reached the prostration, that is, they're in the mosque, and when he performs the Islamic prayers, what happens? The Muslims prostrated themselves with their prophet, confirming what they'd done, and the polytheists and the Quraysh and others who were in the mosque prostrated when they heard the mention of their gods. Now I'm going to finish there, and that's the longest reading, but I hope you can see that there is this long reading. Look how long it goes, right? There's this long hadith, this long story about Muhammad wanting to win over the Meccans, thinking about how to do it. One day when he's reciting about the gods of Mecca, he says that these gods are valid. These gods are valid, and you can hope in their intercession. But what we're told is that was Satan who put that on Muhammad's lips. Okay? Now, you can continue to read the rest of the story, but what we see is that the Meccans then say, hey, we'll accept Muhammad, and they bow down and pray with him in the mosque. Now, I want us to look at this long hadith. Look how long it is, right? So it's what, one page? It's probably 2 pages in length. So it's fairly long. I'm now going to show you how it appears in the 4th century in the #1 collection of hadiths. Okay, so here is how this story, which is attested across all the Muslim early communities, right? What I just read to you, that's the standard story of Muhammad's life. I'm going to read to you what Imam Bukhari, who is called Sahih, the most trustworthy of all the collectors of hadiths. Let's have a look at how he retells his story. Here it is. Narrated Ibn Abbas. The Prophet prostrated while reciting Surah 53, and with him prostrated the Muslims, the pagans, the jinn, and all human beings. That's it. That's it. Right? This is what Imam Bukhari leaves of that story. So here is the man who's meant to be the #1, passing on the traditions, the stories of Muhammad, the hadiths of Muhammad. And this is what he passes on of that story, that Muhammad recited Surah 53. He tells you nothing about why Muhammad was reciting Surah 53. He tells you nothing about Muhammad's desire to win over his people. You know, he basically leaves out almost all the story. He leaves out all the parts about Satan. And all he says is that the Meccans prayed with Muhammad when he read Surah 53. Now, I want to say to you, Bukhari is not reliable. Right? Just have a look at that example. He has chopped off so much, and he's cut out all the bits that are embarrassing about Muhammad. He's taken away all the bits that are embarrassing about Muhammad. I want to give you another example. And these are all much simpler now. So in Surah 66 of the Quran, verse 1, it says, "Why do you, O Muhammad, make illegal or forbidden what Allah..." Sorry, I better read it out correctly here. Let me just get the Quran for me. Surah 66. Surah 66. Surah 66, sorry about this. It says, so Surah 66, verse 1, "O Prophet, why do you prohibit what Allah has made lawful for you, seeking the approval of your wives?" Okay, now it doesn't tell you what it's talking about, but it's something to do with Muhammad's wives, and it's something to do with Muhammad prohibiting something from himself. And the God of Muhammad is saying, why do you prohibit what I have made lawful for you because of your wives? Right? You know, you're prohibiting it because of your wives. Well, what is it that Muhammad was prohibiting? Well, it depends which hadith you read. So let's have a look at the first one. It was narrated by Anas that the Messenger of Allah had a female slave with whom he had intercourse, but Aisha and Hafsa would not leave him alone until he said she was forbidden for him. Then Allah the Mighty and Sublime revealed, O Prophet, why do you forbid for yourself that which Allah has allowed for you? And then it goes to the end of the verse. So you see here the context of this verse that this hadith is saying is that Muhammad had a slave girl called Miriam, and Aisha and Hafsa said to him, please don't have sex with Miriam. Okay, please don't have sex with her. And so Muhammad agreed and said, okay, I won't have sex with her. Now, when you read the full accounts, what happened was Aisha and Hafsa went away, and when they came back, they caught Muhammad having sex with Miriam. And so this causes a scandal. Okay, it causes a scandal. And then in the next verse 62, it says, Allah has cancelled your promises. And it says to Muhammad that if he makes a promise, that he doesn't have to keep it because the promise doesn't stand. Okay, so you can read that for yourself. Now, again, when you read that hadith, it's a bit embarrassing, isn't it? It's a bit embarrassing because Muhammad's making a promise not to have sex with a slave. He gets caught having sex with the slave, breaking his promise, and now he has to have Allah say to him, "You don't have to keep your promise." And so, that's a bit embarrassing. So what you find is there are other hadiths which give a much more better answer to this verse. Aisha said that the Messenger of Allah used to stay with Zainab bint Jahsh and drink honey at her house. Hafsa and I agreed that if the Prophet entered upon either of us, she would say, I perceive the smell of magafay, that is this nasty smelling gum on you. Have you eaten magafay? He came into one of those ladies, and she said to him, no, rather I drank honey at the house of Zainab bint Jahsh, but I will never do it again. Then the following was revealed, O Prophet, why do you forbid for yourself that which Allah has allowed for you? And so you can see there's a very different reason here. The first hadith says that Surah 61 verse 1, Surah 66 verse 1 is about Muhammad having sex with Miriam when he said he wouldn't. The second hadith is saying it's all about honey, that Muhammad had been drinking a honey drink and it was bad breath. And so because of his bad breath, his wives made him, asked him not to drink it again. Now, there are those two hadiths. They're very different, aren't they? They're for the same event, the same verse of the Quran. And it just seems to me that, one, the Quran, the hadith are not very reliable because they say such different things. And secondly, it actually looks like they're just inventing stories to try to make sense of these verses in the Quran, right? Because the Quran doesn't have any context itself. It doesn't provide its own context. And so Islamic scholars, when they get a verse, they have to find a context for it. And we can see here that people are inventing contexts. They're inventing stories to try to make sense of what's in the Quran. So again, I think that when we look at these, we can say, these hadiths are not reliable. Now, let's move on to our next one. The miracles of Muhammad. Now, I want us to look at what the Quran says. I'm going to read quite a few verses, only half of them though, to really drive home this point. Now, this is what the Quran says about Muhammad and miracles. They say, that is, the Meccans say, why has no sign from his Lord been sent down to him? Say in response, Muhammad, God is able to send down a sign, but most of them do not know. Okay, so here we have the Meccans saying, why does Muhammad do no miracles? And the answer is, God's able to. It's not really an answer, but that's the answer Muhammad gives. Let's look at the next verse. Those who do not know say, why does Allah not speak to us, or there come to us a sign? Thus spoke those before them like their words. Their hearts resemble each other. We have shown clearly the signs to a people who are certain in faith. Right? So they're asking for a sign, and he's saying, well, no, we don't give a sign. There have been signs or whatever, but it's probably referring to the signs of Jesus and other people in the past. But those people in the past, they didn't believe. So it's that type of thing. Let's look at the next one. And they say, why is a sign not sent down to him from his Lord? So say, the unseen is only for Allah. So wait. Indeed, I am waiting with you among those who wait. So again, it's, why is no sign sent down? And Muhammad says, well, I'm waiting, I just haven't been given one. Let's look at the next. Then would you possibly leave out some of what is revealed to you? Or is your breast constrained by it because they say, and again, so people are saying to Muhammad, why has there not been sent down to him a treasure or come with an angel? But you are only a warner, and Allah is the disposer of all things. So again, Muhammad's just a warner. He doesn't have any miracles. And those who disbelieve say, why has a sign not been sent down to him from his Lord? You are only a warner, and for a people is a guide. Let me just get this up here. Get this back here. Look, I'm not going to read the other two there, but you get the point. And there's a whole lot more, right? So when you read the Quran, it's Muhammad does no miracle. Allah could bring one if he wanted to, but he hasn't. He's given them in the past, and the people didn't believe. And he says this a lot, right? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. About 12 times you get this idea that Muhammad gave no miracle, and that his only miraculous thing is the Quran. That's the thing that you can't make something like. Now, when you read the Hadith, there are some Hadith which say this. Okay, narrated by Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, "There was no prophet among the prophets, but was given miracles because of which people had security or had belief. But what I was given was the divine inspiration which Allah revealed to me." That is, the prophets before him, the prophets before him had miracles, but Muhammad's miracle is the divine inspiration. It's the Quran. Okay. So I hope that my followers will be more than the followers on the other prophets on the day of resurrection. So there's a hadith saying what the Quran says. Muhammad didn't do miracles. The Quran is his miracle. However, when you go and read the hadith, the other hadiths, we find a whole range of miracles being given to Muhammad, being said of Muhammad. In fact, you can get Islamic books about all Muhammad's miracles. Now, none of them come from the Quran. Well, there is one they claim, and we'll look at that. But they all come from the hadith. And so I'm not going to read this all out, but Muhammad comes into a house. There's not enough food in the house. Okay. And so a woman takes a barley grain, she grinds it, and then she goes and feeds people, and they all eat their fill. Okay. They all eat their fill. Now, that's just taking a biblical story, and, it's not in the Quran, but making it about Muhammad. So those 10 entered and ate their fill. Again, he said, let 10 more enter upon me. Those 10 entered and ate their fill. Then he said, let 10 more enter upon me. He also called 40 persons. Then Allah's apostle ate and got up. I started looking at the food to see if it had decreased or not. And so here is a miracle of Muhammad, a very public one, where he's feeding tens of people. People are just coming through, and he's multiplying them, multiplying the food. Okay, now, how does that fit with the Quran? We're told in the Quran that Muhammad doesn't do miracles, that his miracle is the Quran. Okay, now we get the same miracle, but this time with milk. So I'm not going to read it all out. There's the bowl of milk, and start giving it to everyone. And if you read the whole lot, you'll see down here, drink. I drank, and I kept drinking repeatedly. And there's remaining milk. Okay. Now, what's the next one down here? Oh, now this was a very public one where they needed rain. There hadn't been any rain in Mecca for a long time, and so Muhammad comes out, prays, and it rains immediately. And so that's a miracle in terms of bringing something from God straight away. And so that's a very public miracle that he does, that everyone would have seen. And it talks about how the rain just flooded the place because there was so much rain. And so it's here. So Allah, you can see here, Allah showed them, the people, the miracle of his prophet. So Muhammad's showing publicly to the unbelievers. It's the whole of Mecca. All right. So let's see. What are the next ones down here? So this one is a public one as well. So the Muslims would, as you know, Muslims have to wash their hands before they pray, but they're at a location where they didn't have water. Now the Quran says you can rub your hands with dirt, and that is an effective way of making your hands clean. So that's okay. But what happens is this: they want to perform ablution, and the blessing is from Allah. I saw water gushing out from his fingers. So the people performed ablution and drank. And I tried to drink more of that water beyond the thirst and my capacity, for I knew that it was the blessing. It was the blessing of Allah. Now, how many persons were with you then? I replied, there were 1,400 men. So here is Muhammad, and water is coming out from his fingers so that they can drink, so that they can wash themselves. And it's for 1,400 men. This is a public miracle. Okay. Now, I just want to say that is completely against the Quran. These hadiths are clearly fabrications. If you're, these come from the Sahih Hadith, so the trustworthy collection. So if we have a look at all of these, all the ones I've just been giving you, Bukhari, down here, Bukhari, over here, Bukhari, down here, Bukhari. These will come from the number one collection of hadiths. This is the number one collection of hadiths in the Muslim world. And they are saying things completely opposite to what the Quran says. The Quran says 12 times, Muhammad did no miracle. The Quran is his miracle. You can prove it's a miracle by trying to copy and make something like it. And Muhammad, the Muslims say you can't. Whether or not you can't, that's another point. You get to the hadiths, Muhammad has got water flowing out of his hands. He's multiplying food. He prays and it rains. This is clearly fabrication. This is clearly fabrication. The Quran has to trump these these stories. And the Quran is so clear. We've got a straight out contradiction at best. Sorry, a straight out contradiction, and you cannot reconcile these. Now, Muslims, to get around this, they say that Muhammad split the moon. And so this comes from, this is a verse in the Quran, Surah 54. Now, first of all, if the Quran actually did have Muhammad doing a miracle, that would be odd, because it says 12 times that he didn't do a miracle. Okay? So if there is a reference to Muhammad doing a miracle, the first thing would be that's contradictory to the Quran, because it says, he doesn't do them. But they do try to find one there. And this comes from Surah 54. And it says, the hour has come near and the moon has split. And if they see a sign, they turn away and say, passing magic. Now, what they say there is, and there's all these hadiths you can read, where it's Muhammad splitting the moon in half. And they say that this is what the Quran says here. However, when you read it, it doesn't say Muhammad did a miracle. What it says is that the hour has come near and the moon is split. Now, the hour that it's speaking about is the hour of Judgment Day, the hour of the hour of Judgment Day. And so that's what it's speaking about. It's not talking about Muhammad doing a miracle, right? It's saying the hour is coming near and the moon is split. Now, when you read elsewhere, and I've given you some references, you may like to look at, say, Surah 84, verse 1. It talks about the last hour and that the mountains will fall down. And, this is how the last hour is described in the Quran, that creation itself will shake as the last hour approaches. And so this is just one of the ways that the Quran talks about the coming of the last hour. It doesn't say Muhammad did a miracle. It's just describing the events that it says surround the last hour, and it does this elsewhere. So if a Muslim takes you to Surah 54, that's just not it's not true. That's not saying that Muhammad did miracles. The Quran it says again and again Muhammad did no miracles. But when we read the Hadith, particularly Bukhari, he's got Muhammad doing miracles publicly everywhere, which is against it. And so I want to say the Quran, the Hadith, is not reliable. Now, I'm just going to quickly do these, and I'm going to finish up soon. The return of Jesus. The return of Jesus is never mentioned in the Quran. Okay, it's never mentioned in the Quran. There are two verses that they refer to, but none of them talk about the return of Jesus. That they say it will be a sign of the hour, and so they say that it is referring to Jesus. But when you read it, it's referring to the Quran, and the Quran is a sign of the hour to come because the Quran tells you about the hour, the final hour. So I'm not going to go through both of them, but the Quran never says that Jesus is returning. This comes from comes from the Hadith. And the reason why they've got Jesus returning is this is how they make sense of the crucifixion accounts within the Quran, because there are two verses about the crucifixion which say Jesus died, but then there's one verse which says to the Jews he only appeared to die. And so they try to harmonize this by having him come back. But there are Muslims who do not accept the return of Jesus. And because it's only found in the Hadith. Now, I want to finish up. What have I got here? I'll just finish up with these. Another thing we see is that the Hadiths are just really unscientific. So narrated Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, if a housefly falls in the drink of any one of you, he should dip it in the drink and take it out. For one of its wings has a disease and the other has the cure for the disease. Now, I'm sure you can imagine that modern Muslims with medical knowledge know that that's complete nonsense. Now, Muhammad may well have said this. So in one sense, I want to say it may be a true hadith, right? It could be a true hadith, but it's just nonsense, right? So I'm looking at something different here. It's not that these necessarily are false stories, but what they say is the content is false in this case. Let's have a look at the next one. Narrated Anas, as for the resemblance of the child to its parents, so this is answering the question, why is it that sometimes a child looks like the mother more and other times it looks like the father more? Okay, so he's answering that question. Muhammad's answering a scientific question. It says, if a man has sexual intercourse with his wife and gets discharged first, he ejaculates first, the child will resemble the father. And if the woman gets discharged first, the child will resemble her. Right? On that, Abdullah bin Salim said, I testify that you are the apostle of Allah. Now, this is saying that, and this may sound a little crass, so I'll just talk in medical terms, but it's saying that in the sexual act, a man ejaculates with the sperm, but it's saying that a woman also ejaculates inside. And so whichever one orgasms first, that works out who the child looks like. Now, again, this is from Sahih Bukhari. It may be a true story back to Muhammad, but it's complete and utter nonsense. It's complete and utter nonsense scientifically. I hope I didn't make you feel too uncomfortable with that, but this is the type of stuff that's in there. It's like complete and utter nonsense when it comes to scientific understandings. We've got this one here. I was sitting behind the apostle of Allah, who was riding a donkey while the sun was setting. He asked, do you know where it sets? I replied, Allah and his apostle know best. He said, it sets in a spring of warm water. And so Muhammad seems to be saying that the sun actually goes down into a spring of warm water. And again, that comes, I'm pretty sure that one comes from Bukhari. I'd have to check. I've got two references there. What's the next one I've got? Narrated Anas, some people from the tribe of Uqal came to the Prophet and embraced Islam. The climate of Medina did not suit them, so the Prophet ordered them to go to the herd of camels, for charity, and to drink their milk and urine as medicine. So again, this is Muhammad's medical advice to drink camel urine, and I've seen photos of Muslims doing this, and the other Muslims standing around wincing at the idea. But this is Muhammad's medicine, amongst other things. And what's this last one here? Narrated Anas bin Malik. The Prophet said, Allah put an angel in charge of the uterus, and the angel said, O Allah, semen, there is semen here. O Allah, it is now a clot. O Allah, now a piece of flesh. And then if Allah wishes to complete the creation, the angel asks, O Lord, will it be a male or a female? A wretched evildoer or a blessed doer? How much will his provision be? And so this is saying that you start your a baby starts in the womb just with the semen, and then it starts to grow from either the woman or the man, and then it starts to grow, and then after a certain period of time, God says, oh, I'm going to make it a male or I'm going to make it a female. When we actually know now that from the moment of conception, male and female has already been sorted out. Now, there we go. There's all of those. I'm going to stop sharing. I want to talk about how do we use this in a, well, I've got a couple of applications. My first one is I just want you to realize what a shaky foundation Islam is actually based on. The references I've been giving you are the Islamic canon. This is their canon. These are their holy books. The Quran is not their canon. It's the Quran and the Hadith. And this is what these Hadiths are like. right? This is Sahih Bukhari. When you read him, these are the types of things he's saying. We've seen how he takes well-established early stories in Muhammad's life and cuts them down to just a single sentence to remove the embarrassing parts of Muhammad's life. We've seen how stories are being invented to explain certain verses. We've seen how stories are invented in direct contradiction to verses in the Quran with the miracles. And we've also seen that the actual content of these hadiths are just absurd and ridiculous. Okay, so this is what I want you to do. Now, how do we use this in evangelism? I think what we need to do is to maybe write a booklet with this type of information that I've given you here, and God willing, I'll write a booklet on this later on, and just to discuss this with your Muslim friend. Now, why discuss the hadith with them? I think if we discuss Muhammad's character, we want to attack Muhammad's character or we want to attack the Quran, they're probably going to get their back up and not really listen to anything you've got to say. But the hadith are not held in the same regard as Muhammad and the Quran. And so I actually think that there's a great opportunity here for helping a Muslim see the falseness of Islam. And that is by starting at a point that is not as important to them. It still is important, don't get me wrong, it still is important. But what I find in practice is that Muslims are much more likely to dismiss hadiths and to not choose this one and to choose that one as they make their own canon. And I think it's helpful to simply show them how unreliable the hadiths are. And what I think we can do is we can just sort of crack open the door that Islam's not that reliable. And, if you try to crack it open with Muhammad or the Quran, that's going to be hard to plant that seed of doubt. But with the hadith, while they know they still need it, they're more open to accepting and rejecting different hadiths. But they still need the hadith. This is the point. And so you can say to them, what do you think of these hadiths? Do you accept them? Do you reject them? And they're going to say, yeah, I don't accept them. I don't reject them. But then, you can just say, well, how can you be sure about these other hadiths? They all have, they've all been transmitted reliably. They have what's called a chain of narration. All the ones we looked at are in Bukhari. They're all in the good collections. Bukhari thought they were sahih. They were trustworthy. Did Bukhari get it wrong? I mean, how do you work this out? And I think this can be a great place of just sowing some doubt at a place where they will accept it, and then letting that sink in for a while. So that's how I think we can use this information. Now, I'm going to finish there, and I will go back to Carmen, and we can take questions if you're there, Carmen. Carmen, are you there? I hope someone's out there. I hope I haven't been talking to myself all this time.
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry. Yeah. I didn't have control over the things to get me back in there. Sorry. Sure. I've been listening. We've all been listening. Sorry. Thank you. That was great. Wow, that was a lot of information. And I just want to say that I think it would be a great idea for you to write a book. I think you should do that, because people like me, I could use that. Like, I need to see it, to read it, to,
Yeah, and so just to let people know, on my website, so my website is engagingwithislam.org, and at my website, I do have a number of booklets that I have written. And so there's one on the Trinity, the Incarnation, the Crucifixion. And so the reason I said I should write a booklet is I have a number of these, and so I'm making a promise to everyone here now that I've got that information there. I'll make it into a booklet, And if you give me a month or so, it'll be on my website, Engaging with Islam, and you'll be able to download it. And the idea would be you give it to a Muslim and you just ask the questions and say, you know, what are you going to do with this? You know, what are you going to do with this?
Well, I'm going to hold you to that promise of 1 month.
Yeah.
This is especially good for me because I have a lot of Muslim friends, and I don't think that they've ever really thought too deep into any of this. Like, what happens if the hadith isn't, you know, if it's not what it says it is. I don't think that they really put too much thought into any of it, really. I just think that they believe it, and then that's enough for them. I think out of fear, they don't want to think anything else. That's what holds them back. But we do have a lot of questions in the chat.
Right.
A lot of good ones. So let's see. So Tamia, maybe, I'm sorry if I apologize if that's not how you pronounce your name, but she asks, I heard that the Saudi prince plans to eliminate most of the hadiths and rely mostly on the Quran. In your opinion, can that be implemented with Islam and the Muslim world?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And yes, I saw that as well. And I've got a little similar comment from the president of Egypt. I don't think you can remove most of the hadiths because, as I said, well, I don't think you can remove all the hadiths, first of all, because if you remove all the hadiths, you have no context for the Quran and you have no practices for Muslims to do. As I said, you can't read the Quran and come away with pray 5 times a day. You can't read the Quran and come away with circumcision. It's just not there. So he's not going to be able to get rid of everything. And I think also the Saudi prince was it the Saudi king? He's underestimating the Quran a bit, because even if you got rid of the Quran, and I think the reason he's doing that is he wants to make Islam more palatable for the rest of the world. But even if you got rid of the hadith and just kept the Quran still calls for the conquest and subjugation of Christians and Jews in Surah 9, verse 29. So I don't think that's actually going to help his cause all that much. The Quran still calls for crucifying people who cause mischief. You know, like, even if you got rid of the hadith, I don't think it's going to solve his problem, right? So that was my response there. And then the thing I wanted to say about the president's comments from Egypt, and you can Google this. He wanted the hadith, the references of the hadith and Quran taken out of the Egyptian students, the school students' textbooks, because he just said they caused too much trouble having them in there. So this is something that leaders in Muslim countries are having to wrestle with.
Yeah, that is a big deal, and I hope from this point on they just keep asking more questions and keep eliminating things, and then at some point they're just not going to be able to make any sense of any of it. We have another question from Roxby. I think you just answered that. Can the Quran be understood without the hadiths?
No.
Yeah.
No. You have to. The Quran is a book without a context, and so you can still get some things out of it, right? I'm not saying you can't understand anything of it. You know, there are some surahs which are just like a psalm. Right, so it might be like reading the Psalms, in that the surah might say, look at the sunrise, look at this, look at that. Isn't Allah amazing, right? And so you can read that, and it stands alone, right? It stands alone. So there are some parts of the Quran like that, but there's a lot of the Quran where the context is actually crucial to not only understanding it, but also how to apply it and when to apply it. And so you do need these other traditions, these hadiths, to put it in its chronology and to understand what it was saying in the first place.
Mm-hmm. What would in your opinion, engaging with a Muslim for the first time, without scaring them off, how would you approach them in a conversation? If they're willing to, converse with you, where would you start?
Now, so this is just in evangelism general, not with the hadiths.
Yes, in general.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Because, and Carmen, I'm sure you've heard this before, but because Islam comes 600 years after Christianity, it means that when you read the Bible, you never learn about Islam, okay? Because Islam is 600 years in the future. You don't have the apostles evangelizing Muslims or anything like that. In the book of Acts, they're not. If they're in Jerusalem today, Paul was in Jerusalem today, he'd be evangelizing Muslims, wouldn't he? Right? Yeah. But when we read Paul in Jerusalem in Acts, he's not. Now, but when you read the Quran, because it comes after Christianity, Christianity is a major subject in the Quran. In fact, I would argue there's more detail given about Christianity than there is about the 5 pillars of Islam. Okay. Yet whenever we teach about Islam, we teach the 5 pillars, when I'm saying they've got a lesser role than what you might think. Now, what that means is that Muslims are actually meant to learn about Christianity. Muslims are meant to learn about Christianity. Now, so that's the context for my answer. So how is it then that you begin a conversation with a Muslim? So this is what I do if I get in a taxi and it's a Muslim taxi driver or something like that, or I sit down, have a coffee with a Muslim. I say to them, what have you heard about Christianity? What have you heard? Now, they think I'm asking them about Islam, right? They think I'm asking them about Islam because the Quran teaches about Christianity more than it teaches about the 5 pillars. So it's like me coming up to you. You sit down, imagine if a Muslim sat down with you, had a cup of coffee, and he said, can you tell me about the cross? Right now, you're not going to be offended, are you? Right? You're going to go, no, you're asking me about my religion. Well, if you say to a Muslim, what does Islam teach about Christianity? Now, when I've done that with Muslims, I've had different responses. Some Muslims have said to me, I don't know. I don't really know anything about what the Quran teaches. And that is such a good thing for me to know, right? I now know who I'm speaking to. I've spoken to others who said to me, oh, well, you've corrupted the Bible. Jesus didn't die on the cross. And, and he just rattled them all off. And I just went, wow, that's really good that I know that that's where you're coming from. So this is where I begin. Whenever I talk to a Muslim, I say, what have you heard about Christianity? And I just listen to them and I let them tell me who they are. And then now after that, you can sort of take your own steps. And I've got in my book, so I've got a book where I go through this, where to start with Islam. And I go through that in the chapter. I've given this training on George's chapter many times. In fact, yeah, I think I'll just leave it at that point because I just want to give one simple thing. What have you heard about Christianity, and listen to them.
I grew up in Dearborn. So are you familiar with Dearborn, Michigan?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm still a part of because they have a group page, for the community. And I found that the other day yesterday for the 9/11, they did this, the anniversary post about it. And I saw that everyone in the comments, it was beyond frustrating, but they were saying things like, Islam is the most peaceful religion, that they're tired of apologizing for 9/11, which I understand. I mean, I get it. I mean, just for me growing up in that city, I know a lot of them were hurt by it too. And I know, it just, it shocked us all. But now 20 years later, they don't, at least I can speak for where I came from. I don't think they know they don't know the Islam that you're teaching. They don't understand it like that. It's not being taught in the mosques there, or they're not hearing it, or they're not reading it. And they're all blind. And it's really sad. As I was reading the comments, I wanted to reply, but I was so overwhelmed with no one, they're not going to believe me. They're not going to, because that, like you said, they believe the Bible is corrupted. They don't believe it at all. And so you have to start somewhere with them, and sometimes you just don't even know where to begin. So I find myself frustrated and just end up praying. But it's sad. It's sad.
Now, is it possible for me to share a file with everyone?
Yes. Yeah.
So can I send a? Is it possible?
Yeah.
What I mean is, I can give everybody a PDF of what I presented, and then that's got all the references, and you can take it away. So how can I share that?
So can you see the chat?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep,
you can put it in there.
I can't see where to attach a file. Private chat. Okay, hang on. Oh, okay. There's a whole lot of questions that have just appeared.
Yeah, you see them. Yep, you can place it in there. If you can't place it in there, do you see? You can put. You know what? You can put it in the private chat, and then I can place it in the public chat.
See, I still can't find, a menu box to open up to select a file. Maybe
we can add it to the website. We can get it from you, and then we can add it to the website, and then they can go to the website if they want that.
Okay. Yes. Okay, we'll have to do that.
Yeah.
Because I'd like to share those notes with people. Like I gathered them all together. You may as well have the PDF of them.
Yeah, that would be beneficial for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if we have. Here we have a question. How did they determine what was Sahih?
Yes. So there is a whole method of judging whether or not a hadith is trustworthy. And the main method is that it has what's called a chain of narration. And that is that, Muhammad said it or Muhammad did it. And then somebody reliable, so Muhammad did it. We'll make it this one. Muhammad did it. Somebody reliable tells someone about, says it. They tell it to someone else who's reliable. They tell it to someone else who's reliable. They tell it to someone else who's reliable. And then Bukhari writes it down in his book. And so there's a whole science within Islam, a whole area of study where they have books on all of these individuals and their life's biographies. So you can get these books, and it'll be a dictionary. And in fact, I could even share those files. You can get a dictionary of all the main characters in Islam's history and whether or not they were reliable. And they will look at the chain of narration, and they'll say, was this person reliable? Was this person reliable? Was this person reliable? Was this person reliable? And they say, yep, it's a reliable chain. Therefore, we can trust this hadith. Now, okay, you may want to make those chains, but I also want to say those chains can be easily invented, right? You can just have a chain, you can just have a hadith and put those names on it. Now, Muslims have ways of trying to get around this, but I think you can see from the examples I gave where, a reliable person will say that, that Surah 66 verse 1 was about this. And then a reliable chain of narration will say it was about something completely different. Now, they both have reliable chains, yet they're saying completely opposite things. And then you've got all these reliable chains, trustworthy people saying being faithful in their transmission about all these miracles that Muhammad did publicly, when the Quran says he did no miracles publicly. So, clearly these chains of narration don't actually mean anything in the end. Now, what is interesting there is that the Quran, the Quran has a chain of narration as well. So, and remember at the beginning, I was saying that there's a bit of overlap between the Quran and the Hadith. Not only do those stories in the Quran have a list of names who passed it on, but when you read the Quran, if you look at the beginning, and you can read Arabic, it will often tell you the list of names who passed this one on. And so this is the Quran according to Imam Hafs. right? This is the Quran. This is the Quran according to Imam Warsh. Okay, now these Qurans actually have different chains of narration for them passing on. They're actually different. There's about 1,300 small differences between these Qurans. But they have their own chains of narration. And what's interesting is when you look at those chains of narration, there's a man named Azim and Hafs in this, and he is considered by Shias to be unreliable. He is an unreliable transmitter of information. And so the chain of narration for the Hafs Quran, which is the #1 Quran used in the world, is actually a faulty chain of narration. And there's a whole range of things you can look at that. So even if we use their own standards and you go and look at the Quran, it's not reliable.
That's a lot to take in. You know, I feel like a part of me feels bad because I want them to know the truth, but I can't imagine, you know, believing something their entire life and then having to come to terms with it not being what it says it is, or what they thought it was, or, you know, it just being a lie. And I know that a lot of people, you know, the Muslims don't want to accept that. So, I mean, I pray for them, and I pray that, you know, the Lord will show them the truth. And I pray, like, for me, even that I will have the words to say to them that will at least, you know, pique their interest to start seeking on their own, to try to prove me wrong, or to try to prove the world wrong, that, you know, it's not a peaceful religion, as much as they want to pick and choose from it and pull out the things that are peaceful. And, you know, I have friends that post beautiful things that the Quran says or the Hadiths say, and they're nice, but there's a lot more to that. Let's see. And so someone's asking, what's the website? So you have a website?
Right. Yes. Now, I'll give you my address. So can I post? I don't think I can post.
Yeah, no.
So but can you post?
I don't know if I can on this end. I'm sure one of my moderators can post what you're saying as you say it. So if you say the website. Okay.
So my website is Engaging with Islam, all one word, engagingwithislam.org. Engagingwithislam.org. And I've got loads of resources, free download. Like there's a free training course you can do. There's loads of booklets you can download. You know, go there and explore it. Go there and explore it.
That's great. That's a lot of great information, a lot of time on your end. And I'm really grateful for the time that you spend. And, you know, as much as people want to say that, that we do this, I don't know, that, you know, I know where your heart is. All of our hearts are just because we love them. We want them to see the truth. We want them to see to see Christ and to come to Christ and to be steered away from this false religion. And that's where our hearts are at. And I know that with the time that you spend and the research that you do, that's the reason, that's the motivation behind it. And I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. And look, we all build on each other's shoulders, you know. So I've learned from Jay Smith when I was a younger man. I learned from Jay Smith and John Gilchrist, and, you know, and we're all a history. We're a movement, and we all do our part. And God willing, you know, I'll make my contribution, and then other people build on that, and we all do our part. We all do our part.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so I think that's it for the questions. And we want to thank you so much, Reverend Samuel Green. I appreciate all that you did tonight, and I will be getting your book, and I've been at that website reading those questions and answers forever. That is such a resourceful page. I think I've printed out hundreds of pages from there just to have at my disposal, and I appreciate all that time that you spend in there. So for the chat, I would like, on behalf of Ministry to Muslims, we want to thank everyone for tuning in. We're going to take a short break, and then don't forget to click on the link at 6:30 Pacific time. 9:30 Eastern Time for our next session. And I want to thank you all for joining us. See you later. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for that, Carmen.
Thank you. Let's see.
Now with that file, do you want me to email it to you so you can make sure George puts it up, or because if I just send it to George, he may not know the context.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, well, go ahead and email to George, and I'll tell him the context.
Okay. All right. I'll send that to George, and I'll just say speak to Carmen about it, and she'll do that, because it'd be nice for people to have that file to be able to use.
Yeah, we'll make sure to put that up. Okay. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.